Hello everyone, today we're going to look at graphing by point substitution. Whenever you graph a type of curve, you can always start with making a table of points. For a line, you want to have at least 3 points because any 2 points will make a line and you want to make sure that you have the correct line. So for example, we're going to graph the line y equals 3x minus 2 using point substitution. And again, we're going to label at least 3 points. So what we want to do here is we want to look at the coefficient of x and remember that it's easier to graph integers than it is to graph fractions and decimals. So if your coefficient of x has a fraction, you want to choose the multiples of that denominator. So for this example, y equals 3x minus 2, the coefficient of x is 3, which is already an integer. So really, I can use any values that I want. I don't want to use too large of values because I do want to keep in mind that I have the origin in the middle. So I don't want to do something like x equals 20 that's not in my picture. I also don't want to do numbers that are too close together some of the times because I want to make sure that I can make my line nice and straight. So I'm going to choose something like maybe -2, 0, and 2. 0 is the easiest one. You should always plug in 0, because if I plug in x as 0, I know that y is -2, and that's fairly easy to do. So if I go up to my first one, -2, 3 times -2 is -6, minus 2 is -8. And then I plug in +2. 3 times 2 is 6, 6 minus 2 is 4. So I plug in my x into my y value, do it out, and I get my numbers. And then the next thing I want to do is plot them. I'm going to make sure that I've got a big enough dot here. So -2, -8, -2 in the x direction, -8 in the y direction. So that's right around there. Just make that a little darker. So I have 2, -8, and then I have 0, -2, so that's going to be right around there. It's a little off, but that's all right. And then 2, 4. So 2 in the x direction, 4 in the y direction, and that's as close as I'm going to be able to get it with my finger. So you want to make sure that your 3 points really are in a straight line, which mine are pretty close. Again, it's hard to do it on the iPad. And then I'm going to connect them with as straight of a line as I can manage. And that was kind of terrible. Let's try that again. I also thought that I made it smaller. It's close enough. You want to make sure that your line is taking up your whole graph. So you don't want to do a line that looks like that. Okay, that's way too small. You want to use your whole graph. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so there's our first one. For our next one, we have y equals 1/4 x plus 4. So again, note that the coefficient of x is a fraction, and I want my answers to be integers. So for my values of x, I want to choose multiples of 4, so that I know when I multiply it by 1/4, I'll get an integer. So I'm going to do -4, 0, and 4. So that when I plug in -4, 1/4 times -4 is -1. -1 plus 1 is a nice 0. And then I plug in 0. 1/4 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And then lastly, if I plug in 4, 1/4 of 4 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, and then once I have my 3 points, I'm going to graph them. So -4, 0 is 4 in the x direction, 0 in the y direction. 0, 1 is 0 in the x direction, 1 in the y direction. And then 4, 2, oops, that's kind of off. It's still kind of off. Again, I'm doing this on an iPad, it's kind of hard. 4 in the x direction, 2 in the y direction. And then I look at those and I say that's a fairly nice straight line, and then connect it with a line. Again, they're off a little bit, but that's okay. It's close enough. So now we have 3y equals 2x. If I want to do point substitution for this, the easiest way is to take my equation and solve it for y. So I have 3y equals 2x. So to get y by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So y equals 2/3 x. And again, my coefficient of x is a fraction, so I want to take x values that are multiples of that denominator. So -3, 0, and 3 are the easiest to choose. If I plug in -3, 2/3 times -3, the 3's cancel, and I'm left with the -2. I plug in 0, 2/3 of 0 is 0. I plug in 3, again the 3's cancel very nicely, and I'm left with a +2. And then comes time to graph it. So -3, -2 goes right here. 0, 0, right in the origin. And then 3, 2 goes right there. And again, we want to make sure that that looks good, that they are in a straight line. And then as nicely as we can, make a straight line along this whole thing. That's not too bad. Okay. So let's try another one. Graph the function y equals -2 using point substitution, labeling at least 3 points. So notice that there is no x in here. So the coefficient of x is 0, which again is an integer. So I can choose any values of x that I want, and I'm still going to get out an integer. So just to spice things up a little bit, let's do -3, 0, because again 0 is always a good one, and 4. So y equals -2. It does not matter what x is. Y is -2. So y is -2 if x is -3, y is -2 if x is 0, and y is -2 if x is 4. Okay, so there is no x, so it doesn't matter. Y is -2. And then again, I'm going to plot them. And it's going to look something similar to this. And then, again, we look at it and we say, are those points all in a straight line? In theory, yes. So I connect them. No matter what x is, y is -2. And our last example, graph 4x minus 3y equals 9 using point substitution. So again, the first thing I want to do is solve this for y. So I have -3y equals -4x plus 9. So I'm moving the 4x over. Don't forget that that 3y is still negative. And then divide everything by -3. So I end up with y equals, the negatives cancel on the x, so I have a +4/3 x. And then 9 divided by -3 is -3. So y equals 4/3 x minus 3. Again, I have a fractional coefficient here, so I want to use multiples of that denominator. So just like in a previous example, I'm going to use -3, 0, and 3. If I plug in -3, 4/3 times -3, the 3's cancel. I'm left with a -4 minus 3 is -7. It's kind of a bad 7. -7. Plug in a 0, and I get 0 minus 3. Plug in a 3, the 3's cancel. I'm left with 4 minus 3, which is 1. Okay, so I have my 3 points here, and then I'm going to graph them. Graphing them, I'll get something that looks like this. Again, you want to make sure that they are all in what would be a straight line. Looks pretty good to me. And the last thing to do is to draw that line. Okay, so make sure that you don't just plot the points. Make sure you draw the line. And again, make sure that it crosses the whole thing that you have, the whole graph that you have. Okay, so make sure you read through the book, try some of the practice problems, try the homework, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.